Did Elvis steal from black artists? Was the king of rock and roll actually a musical thief? These questions have haunted Elvis Presley's legacy for decades, even as millions worldwide continue to adore his music. While Elvis revolutionized American music and culture, his rise to fame wasn't without controversy. The man who became an international sensation building his career on covering songs originally performed by black artists faced accusations of cultural appropriation and disrespect that persist to this day. Though Elvis never claimed to be original and openly credited his influences, the complicated dynamics of race, commerce, and credit in 1950s America created a narrative that's still being unpacked. Let's examine 8 instances where Elvis's covers were seen as particularly problematic or disrespectful by critics, fans, or the original artists themselves. From Hound Dog to In the Ghetto, these songs represent the complex intersection of artistic inspiration, commercial success, and racial politics that defined Elvis's career and continues to spark debate among music historians. Number 8. In the Ghetto, 1969. Who speaks for the inner city? When Elvis recorded In the Ghetto in 1969, many questioned whether a wealthy white superstar from Memphis had any business singing about urban poverty. The song, written by Mac Davis, depicts the cycle of poverty and violence in American inner cities, focusing on a boy born into deprivation who eventually turns to crime and is killed. While Elvis delivered one of his most sensitive vocal performances, the song struck some critics as voyeuristic and exploitative. African-American audiences particularly found it presumptuous for Elvis to position himself as a spokesperson for inner-city struggles. The late 1960s were a period of intense racial tension and activism, with the civil rights movement in full swing and urban uprisings occurring across America. In this context, Elvis's emotional rendition of In the Ghetto felt to some like an appropriation of black pain for commercial gain. Davis, the talker, later reflected. It was a big risk at the time for Elvis to record it. The song reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of Elvis's biggest hits of the late 1960s, but the controversy surrounding it illustrated how even when Elvis wasn't directly covering a black artist, questions about his relationship to black music and culture remained complicated. Some defenders pointed out that Elvis grew up in poverty himself, living in predominantly black neighborhoods in Tupelo and Memphis, giving him personal insight into economic hardship. Others noted that the song actually raised awareness about urban poverty among audiences who might otherwise remain ignorant. The debate around In the Ghetto highlighted how, even late in his career, Elvis remained a lightning rod for discussions about who has the right to tell certain stories through music. Number 7. Don't Be Cruel, 1956. Can you take someone's song and make millions while they struggle? This question haunted Otis Blackwell, who wrote Don't Be Cruel, but watched Elvis turn it into a massive hit. While technically not a cover since Elvis recorded it first, the song exemplifies the power dynamics that troubled many of Elvis's relationships with black songwriters and performers. Blackwell was a prolific joker who also penned All Shook Up and Return to Sender for Elvis. Despite writing songs that defined rock and roll, Blackwell remained relatively unknown to the public, while Elvis became worldwide famous, performing his material. In an era when record companies often manipulated publishing rights and royalties, especially when black artists were involved, Blackwell reportedly sold the rights to Don't Be Cruel for a modest flat fee. When Don't Be Cruel topped the charts for an unprecedented 11 weeks and sold millions of copies, Blackwell watched from the sidelines. Though he received credit as the jokenier, the financial disparity was enormous. In later years, Blackwell admitted, "I was just happy to get my name on the records." The situation exemplified a common practice in the music industry of the 1950s. Black songwriters creating the material that white performers would make famous. While Elvis never denied Blackwell's contributions and always maintained that Blackwell deserved credit, the system itself worked to Elvis's advantage and Blackwell's disadvantage. Jerry Leiber, who co-wrote many Elvis hits including Hound Dog, once observed, "The publishing, the way records were promoted, everything was geared toward white artists covering records by black performers." This reality left many black musicians feeling that their contributions to rock and roll were being systematically diminished, with Elvis becoming the most visible symbol of this process. Number 6. Blue Moon of Kentucky. 1954. How do you take a bluegrass classic and turn it into something almost unrecognizable? Elvis answered this question with his radical reimagining of Bill Monroe's Blue Moon of Kentucky, which many traditional country and bluegrass fans considered sacrilegious upon its release in 1954. Monroe, known as the father of bluegrass, had recorded the song as a waltz in 3/4 time with a measured, melancholy feel. Elvis and his band transformed it into an up-tempo rockabilly number with a driving 4/4 beat that bore little resemblance to the original. What made this particularly controversial was Bill Monroe's stature in country music. As a pioneer of bluegrass and a Grand Ole Opry star, Monroe was revered by traditionalists who viewed Elvis's version as disrespectful to both Monroe personally and to the bluegrass tradition as a whole. For many country music purists, this recording represented everything threatening about the emerging rock and roll sound. It was too fast, too wild, and too influenced by rhythm and blues. Sam Phillips, who produced the recording at Sun Records, recalled that there was genuine concern about how Monroe would react. According to Phillips, "We all wondered if Bill Monroe would pitch a fit about what we'd done to his song." The stakes were high for the young Elvis, as alienating the country music establishment could have seriously damaged his early career. Interestingly, history took an unexpected turn when Monroe, after initially expressing displeasure, realized the financial benefits of Elvis's cover, bringing renewed attention to his composition. Monroe eventually embraced the cover, and even adapted his own performances of the song to incorporate elements of Elvis's arrangement. This pragmatic response didn't completely eliminate the feelings among traditionalists that Elvis had committed a form of musical desecration, but it did help legitimize Elvis in country music circles. The controversy surrounding Blue Moon of Kentucky highlighted how Elvis's music challenged established boundaries between musical genres and traditions, often creating friction with purists, but ultimately contributing to the cross-pollination of American musical forms that would define rock and roll. Number 5. Money. Honey. 1956. What happens when a raw, gritty R&B song gets smoothed out for mainstream consumption? This question daubed Elvis's cover of Money, Honey, originally recorded by Clyde McPhatter and the Drifters in 1953. McPhatter's version featured his distinctive high tenor voice and the Drifters' authentic rhythm and blues sensibilities. When Elvis covered it on his debut album, Elvis Presley, in 1956, many R&B purists felt he had tonahayed the song for white audiences. The original version had a rougher edge, with McPhatter's emotional delivery conveying the desperation in lyrics about financial hardship. Elvis's version, while energetic, lacked some of the original's raw quality and social commentary. Critics pointed to this as a perfect example of how Elvis and the music industry whitewashed black music to make it palatable to mainstream America. Atlantic Records producer Jerry Wexler, who worked with many R&B artists, including the Drifters, commented on the phenomenon of white artists covering black songs. The covers took away opportunities, exposure, and, most crucially, financial rewards from the original artists. For many, Elvis's Money Honey epitomized this problem, becoming a commercial success, while the Drifters' original remained known primarily to R&B enthusiasts. The difference in promotion was stark. Elvis performed his version on national television programs that rarely featured black artists, exposing the song to audiences who might never have heard the Drifters. While Elvis may have introduced many white teenagers to rhythm and blues through his covers, the unequal commercial outcomes reinforced perceptions that the music industry operated on a double standard based on race. Despite these criticisms, some music historians note that Elvis's cover featured authentic rockabilly elements that weren't simply a watered-down version of the original. His interpretation added a country influence that created something genuinely new. This creative transformation didn't erase the problematic aspects of the cover, but illustrates the complex nature of musical cross-pollination during the birth of rock and roll. Number 4. Tutti Frutti, 1956. Can you take a sexually explicit song, clean it up, and claim it as your own? Elvis did exactly that with Tutti Frutti, originally recorded by Little Richard. The original lyrics were so blatantly sexual that they had to be rewritten before Little Richard could even record it for release. But even after this initial cleanup, Elvis's version further sodomized the song, removing much of the raw energy and suggestive delivery that made Richard's recording revolutionary. Little Richard himself was especially vocal about his feelings regarding Elvis's cover. "I was making $40 a week. Elvis came along and made all the money," Richard lamented in interviews. The financial disparity was staggering. While Elvis's version helped establish him as a superstar, Little Richard saw comparatively little benefit from creating what many consider one of rock and roll's foundational recordings. What made this particularly problematic was that Little Richard's original version contained coded references to gay sex in its original form, Tutti Frutti. "Good booty" was the original opening line before being changed to Tutti Frutti a Ruti. The song represented not just black culture, but queer black culture, dimensions completely lost in Elvis's straightforward commercial interpretation. Radio stations in the 1950s were far more likely to play Elvis's version than Little Richard's, citing concerns about the suggestive nature of Richard's performance. This pattern reinforced a system where black artists invented musical styles and approaches that white artists then popularized for greater profit. As Little Richard famously put it, "They didn't want me to be the king. They wanted Elvis as king." The cultural legacy of this appropriation extended far beyond the song itself. When Elvis was crowned the king of rock and roll, despite Little Richard's earlier innovations, it reinforced the notion that black cultural creation was only valid once embraced and repackaged by white performers. Little Richard's frequent refrain, "I am the architect of rock and roll," represented his lifelong struggle against this erasure. Number 3. Blue Suede Shoes, 1956. Is it acceptable to cover your friend's signature song while they're recovering from a near-fatal accident? This ethical question surrounded Elvis's recording of Blue Suede Shoes, originally written and recorded by Carl Perkins. In December 1956, Perkins had a hit with the song and seemed poised for stardom when he was involved in a serious car accident that hospitalized him and killed his brother Jay. While Perkins was recovering, Elvis recorded and released his own version of Blue Suede Shoes. Though Elvis had apparently secured permission from Sam Phillips of Sun Records, many viewed the timing as opportunistic. Perkins was in no position to capitalize on his own hit, and Elvis's cover effectively redirected public attention from Perkins to himself at a crucial moment in both artists' careers. Though Perkins and Elvis were friends, and Perkins rarely spoke negatively about Elvis publicly. In his 1996 autobiography, Perkins revealed deeper feelings. "What hurt me the most was Elvis didn't have to do any of my songs. He had dozens of great songs I'm sure he had heard and liked." This sentiment suggests that beneath the surface, Perkins felt Elvis's choice to cover his breakthrough hit wasn't entirely collegial. What complicated this situation was that both artists recorded for Sun Records at different points, with Elvis having moved to RCA by the time of his Blue Suede Shoes recording. Industry insiders suggested that Elvis's cover was partially motivated by his former label wanting to capitalize on a Sun Records song through their bigger star, who now had the marketing muscle of RCA behind him. The fact that both men were white complicates the racial dynamics present in other controversial Elvis covers. But the power imbalance remained evident. Elvis became immortalized, performing Blue Suede Shoes, while many casual music fans today don't even realize it was Perkins' composition. The situation highlighted how, even among white artists, Elvis's immense fame and the business decisions surrounding it could overshadow originators of the music he performed. Number 2. That's All Right. 1954. How can someone's career-making moment be another person's footnote in history? When Elvis recorded Arthur, Big Boy Crudup's blues song, That's All Right, in 1954, it launched Elvis toward superstardom while Crudup remained in poverty. Originally recorded by Crudup in 1946, the song became Elvis's first single for Sun Records and is often cited as one of the first rock and roll recordings. Arthur Crudup's story was particularly tragic. Despite writing songs that became rock and roll standards, he was so poorly compensated that he gave up music several times to return to manual labor. In the early 1970s, Crudup was found living in a trailer without electricity, having seen virtually no royalties from Elvis's success with his compositions. When asked about Elvis, Crudup famously said, "I gave Elvis his first start. I don't hold it against Elvis, but I do hold it against the music business." The contrast in their fortunes was stark. While Elvis earned millions and lived in Graceland, Crudup struggled financially throughout his life. Music journalist Peter Gerlich documented that when Crudup's songs were playing on the radio across America, he was picking berries for $3 a day to survive. This disparity exemplified the systemic exploitation of black artists that pervaded the music industry. What made this situation particularly problematic was that Elvis himself acknowledged his debt to Crudup, once stating, "If I had any ambition, it was to be as good as Arthur Crudup." Despite this recognition, the economic systems in place ensured that Elvis reaped rewards that never reached Crudup. The original Yokerd's obscurity compared to Elvis's fame highlighted how covers could erase not just artistic credit but also economic opportunity. Crudup's predicament reflected the broader experiences of many black-blue artists whose innovations were repurposed by white performers with greater access to recording contracts, radio play, and television appearances. Though Elvis never personally controlled the business arrangements, his success symbolized a system that consistently undervalued black creativity. As B.B. King once observed, many whites simply assumed Elvis invented rock and roll, as if the black artists didn't exist. Number 1. Hound Dog, 1956. Can a man take a woman's feminist anthem and turn it into something completely different? Elvis did exactly that with Hound Dog, perhaps his most controversial cover of all. Big Mama Thornton originally recorded the song in 1952, delivering a powerful performance that centered female empowerment, telling off a worthless man who was just sniffing around her door. Elvis's version transformed it into something almost unrecognizable, a fast-paced rocker that lost the original's feminist meaning and sexual innuendo. The transformation wasn't just musical. Elvis's version changed lyrics and context, shifting the song from a woman's assertion of independence to something more commercially viable but less culturally significant. While Big Mama Thornton's recording sold 500,000 copies, an impressive figure for a black female blues artist in the early 1950s, Elvis's version sold over 10 million copies and became one of his defining hits. Thornton's frustration with the situation was palpable. In a 1971 interview, she said, "That song sold over 2 million copies. I got one check for $500 and never seen another." Her assessment highlighted how the commercial music structure systematically diverted proceeds away from black originators toward white performers who adapted their material. The songwriters Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller also expressed dismay at Elvis's interpretation. Leiber later recalled, "When I heard Elvis's version, I was disappointed. It just sounded terribly nervous, too fast, too white." This judgment, from the song's own creators, emphasized how far Elvis's cover had strayed from the original artistic vision. What made this situation particularly egregious to critics was that in many of his televised performances of Hound Dog, Elvis presented the song as an address to an actual dog, further stripping it of its original meaning and context. These performances, including his famous appearance on The Steve Allen Show, where he sang to an actual basset hound, transformed a blues song about female sexual autonomy into a novelty. The Hound Dog controversy embodied all the tensions surrounding Elvis's relationship with black music, the commercial disparity, the transformation of content, and the public perception that Elvis had created something entirely new. When measured against Big Mama Thornton's original, Elvis's success with Hound Dog remains the most frequently cited example of the problematic aspects of his musical legacy. Have we judged Elvis too harshly? Or have we not held him accountable enough? The truth about Elvis's covers lies somewhere in the complex intersection of personal intentions, systemic inequalities, and the evolving understanding of cultural appropriation. While Elvis himself often expressed admiration for the black artists who influenced him, the music industry of his era was structured to elevate white performers who adapted black musical innovations. This reality created a legacy that continues to inspire both devotion and criticism more than 4 decades after his death. Perhaps the most important question isn't whether Elvis himself was respectful or disrespectful, but how we can acknowledge both his undeniable talent and the problematic systems that allowed him to achieve a level of success systematically denied to many of the artists who inspired him.